Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Lane. My name is Mark, and we are going to be talking about all things Tottenham Hotspur. So, we're going to look at transfer rumours. We're going to be looking at those loan moves for a lot of the young players that we have in the squad. We're going to be talking about the Maddison industry. We'll maybe even touch on Sonny leaving, and we'll also have a quick chat about Pahlinha and the impact we can expect of him now that he has signed on a season-long loan from Bayern Munich. So, first up, let's talk about Sonny. Sonny has now left and made a record MLS transfer to LAFC and completing that move for £20 million. Now, he has turned around and said in that interview that it wasn't his first choice, but they managed to convince him that that was the best move for his next stage in his career. Sonny will be missed, and if you did manage to watch that match against Newcastle in South Korea, that 10-minute part throughout the match where he received the appreciation of the Spurs fans and all of the Korean fans within that stadium. 65,000 stadium, absolute massive. Very emotional. I'll not go too much in it. I think everyone's seen enough to know about that. But we definitely are going to miss him, and he is definitely going to have the best time over there. LA actually has the largest Korean population in America, so he's certainly going to have a lot of people and friendly faces around him while he's there. So best of luck to him, and hopefully we'll see him back at the club soon in another capacity, or even just visiting and watching a few games. It'll be great to see that. Now, in terms of Son, the club have announced that they are not going to be looking at a replacement. Thomas Frank doesn't think he needs anyone to cover that left-hand side. And if you have a look at what the options that we have for that area, we've got Odobert, Tell, Richie, and Kuda. So there's plenty of space there. Obviously, Mikey Moore can play on that side, but he is out on loan at Rangers. So we've got four really good options that can come in and play down that left-hand side. So in terms of that, it means that we're not having to look at a possible transfer there, meaning that anything else coming in can kind of target those other areas. And to be fair to Son, he probably wasn't going to be starting as many games this season if he had have stayed. So it's already been, I think, Thomas Frank certainly has the eye on Odegaard hitting that left-hand side. So what else are we looking at in terms of transfer news? Definitely the need seems to be switching towards a new number 10 as well as a centre back. Um, Alistair Gold has revealed that he spoke in a press conference to Thomas Frank, asked him about a replacement left back, and he said that it wasn't something he was looking at and not something that he thought that he actually needed for the club, simply because we've got a number of players that can play in there as well. Plus, we have Ben Davies that can fill that left back role. Certainly what we've seen in the game against Newcastle in Korea, where we were playing with that flat back four. Once the attacking goes forward and we were in possession, we seem to switch into that three across the back. So if Davies does play, I'm not saying he's going to play all season, but certainly in those games where he is playing, he can certainly switch from that left back role into a centre back role where he has probably played the majority of his time at Spurs in that role. So I can see where he's thinking, well, we don't really need it. It would have been nice, but I think he thinks we're covered. Certainly at a push, we can put Mickey van de Ven into that slot as well. So certainly the two options that we're looking at now definitely seems to be a number 10 and a centre back. Centre backs, you're probably sitting thinking, why do we need that? We've got 9 on the books. A lot of those young guys have went out on loan. Takai is injured, so centre back options are certainly something we're looking at. Romero and Van de Ven are both currently fit, which is great. But if you look at the time they spent playing last season, they both chalked up just over 20 games apiece. So if you're looking at that now, if the same thing was to happen, you can see where we'd have question marks and there'd be a bit of a panic. Yes, we've got Danzo. Danzo looks pretty solid in that space, but you're wanting to have somebody else in there because if we had the same patch again, like what we did previously, where we had both those players out, you've got Danzo and you're looking at one other, possibly Davies popping in there, so definitely another centre back that's ready to roll. Sorry about Takai being injured. Takai is one for now, he's not one for the future. Very experienced player. Japanese international as well, so he needs time to settle as well as to get himself into the team and work his way through that. Midfield options for that number 10 role, there's a load of players that we have been linked with over the past, and certainly we seem to be linked towards players that can fulfill multiple roles. One that seems to have been forgotten about everybody, and nobody really seems to be talking about it, but we were heavily linked with this player, and I think it's a player that could make a real impact at Spurs, Conor Gallagher. I know he's not the best option that everyone wants to see coming through, but he certainly hasn't embarrassed himself while playing in Spain, and was certainly a good player that we'd looked at a season or two ago as well. So even seeing him coming in would be a good option in my mind. But the ones that we're all focusing on is those big name players that everybody is pointing towards that we should be going in at. So if we're going to look at what is in the press and what we're being linked to, Rafael Leo, the 26-year-old at Milan, spoke about him in a previous video. It now looks like there's a bit more traction there in terms of Spurs ramping up conversation with Milan about that player. Again, we're looking at a fee around 50, 60 million pounds. Portuguese international as well. So a really solid option there if you can get it over the line and get him into the club. Certainly a statement signing in terms of Spurs. Garnacho is another one that we're continuously being linked at, but it certainly looks like what's coming out from his camp is he's definitely wanting that move to Chelsea, and it's just been breaking on the Sky News, I think it was saying that it certainly looks like Chelsea are now in talks with Manchester United about signing him. So the odds of him going to Spurs are less. So a good player, but would he have been enough for us? Probably not. We need people that not just attack, but can come back and defend and do all the other bits and pieces as well. And I don't really think that he is the type of player that's going to be able to do that for us. Rodrigo, another one, really great player at Real Madrid, 24-year-old Brazilian, would tick so many boxes, would be a major statement signing for Tottenham. However, he has already said himself on several occasions he does not want to leave Real Madrid. In fact, club insiders have even turned around and said that we haven't even been speaking to them about him, despite all of the links in the press of late, mostly from Spain, saying that we are in for him. Would be a great signing, but again, he doesn't want to leave and certainly wouldn't look as if Spurs would be his ideal or preferred destination. Liverpool, if he was to leave, is the place he'd be wanting to go. So unless they decide they don't want him, I can't see him leaving Madrid and coming to us. But you never know. What else have we got in terms of transfer news as well? Grealish is another player we have been linked heavily with over the last week. In fact, we have been for quite some time, but really heavily over the last week. He is in talks with Everton, apparently. However, he actually favours a move to Spurs and is just waiting to see if Spurs actually want to make that move happen. Considering the injury blow to Maddison and his ACL has been confirmed, he's going to be missing for at least 6 months. We definitely need someone to come in and pick up that slot, especially when you consider the fact that Kulusevski is still out injured and is going to miss at least the first month or two of the season. And even when he comes back, he still needs to get his fitness up to a point where he can actually be considered part of the squad, and actually then after that into the first 11. So there's going to be a lot of time out there where we're missing it, and really puts the kind of creativity that we're looking at through the middle on young lads like Bergval. So we need to make sure that we're bringing somebody in for that. Grealish, even on a season-long loan, got to remember there's a World Cup coming up. He's going to be wanting to be playing football. He's wanting to be out there playing his best football, and he wants to be getting selected for that England squad. So in my mind, it makes a great ideal signing for Spurs, even if it was just on a year-long loan. Even with an option to buy at the end of it, would probably be reasonably solid deal for Spurs, especially if you can get a good price for that. You can play it on the left, and you could potentially play him through the middle as well. So it certainly ticks a few boxes for us. As I say, Maddison is out for 6 months at least. He could be out for the entire season. And to be honest, at 28 years of age, this is the kind of injury that can end a player's career, certainly at a big club. And we don't need to be looking at a temporary option until he's back. I think what we really should be doing now is looking at a permanent option, someone that can come in and take that place. It's unfortunate. I love Maddison. He's a great player. When he plays and turns it on, there's nobody better in his position. However, the problem we have is he gets injured far too many times. And when he does get injured, he's out for a long, long time, which puts us at risk. I mean, you look at that European final, we had none of our creativity. Maddison was out injured. Bergval was injured. We had so many options there that could play that creative role for us that are all out at that point. We had to play a very, very different game than what I think everybody was expecting to see from us in a cup final. So those are the kind of options and things that we are being linked to at the moment. And to be honest, they're all great options. whether or not we pull them all out. The big one, I think, now with the Gibbs Morgan White deal falling through, Maddison getting injured, the one that everyone's pointing at is Eze. Eze is an amazing player. And I think it was a statement signing every Spurs player was looking for this season, and it just hasn't happened at all. I know the talk is that he wants to move to Arsenal. Arsenal don't seem to be wanting to make an awful lot of that move happen unless they are going to take players from them. And to be honest, Palace want the money so they can reinvest that into the squad. So we are also being linked with Mark Gay at the centre half there. So Spurs could hit one club with two moves that will tie up everything we need. Knowing a few Crystal Palace fans as well, they would be quite happy to see them sold as long as they get the big money. You're talking potentially a deal for both of them in the region of what, 110, 120 million. They could end up going away and getting 4 or 5 different players to put into that squad. Palace haven't done an awful lot so far in this transfer window, so it makes perfect sense from their point of view. Get that money in, get in a couple of good players that bolsters and enhances their own squad, and we get what we need. Big statement signings, covering the positions that we need them to, and two players that will impact and make a real difference into that first 11. So, that is the transfer rumour roundup. Let's have a look at the loans. A lot of our young players are now out on loan or will be made available out on loan. Will Lancashire has joined Oxford for the season. Tyrese Hall, the good part of Nottingham, has joined Notts County. Jamie Donnelly is at Stoke. Yang Min Hyuk is away to Portsmouth. It looks as if that deal is going to conclude. George Abbott has joined Wycombe Wanderers. Ashley Phillips, Stoke. Alfie Dorrington back to Aberdeen where he won that cup last season. Mikey Moore has joined Rangers. And we have also made Luka Vuskovic, Alfie Devine, and Dane Scarlett also available for loan. These guys are needing to get that first team experience. I know Luka Vuskovic actually played exceptionally well when he kind of made his pre-season debut for Spurs, assist and a goal. Looks like a really big, solid, quick centre half, and I think it's definitely one for the future. But you got to remember, this kid is 18 years old. Is he going to displace Romero and Van de Ven for a starting berth? Definitely not. You could potentially put him out to that left back role, but I don't think that's where his strengths are. Definitely needs to be playing through the centre. But when you look at the fact that we have Kevin Danzo and Takai has been brought in for the now, and Ben Davies as well. There's 5 players he'd be trying to push in ahead of who have the experience, etc., behind them. So it definitely makes sense as long as it's the right move for him. Certainly, Belgium last year proved out to be quite successful for him. So hopefully, maybe get him into the Championship or maybe even a Scottish Premiership club might be enough to give him a bit of a push. You could maybe even work him into some deal with Crystal Palace if we were to go for Mark Ahe and say, look, we'll take him, but we'll give you him on a season-long loan as well. It may be something that might actually be of interest to Palace or potentially some other club if we're looking at doing a deal. Alfie Devine and Dane Scarlett, however, are certainly ones that I think that you're looking at. They've had 3 or 4 loan spells each. They're still young enough, but they're just not making that breakthrough into the first team squad and certainly not getting the game time you'd be expecting of players that have been getting out on that many loans. This could be the breaking point for both of those players, that if they don't end up with a very successful loan spell for this season and break into the team over the summer, I think we'll be looking at selling both of those players at some point, either in January or potentially in the summer afterwards. So it's really make or break for some of these guys. But a lot of players out there on loan. The problem you then have is when you're looking at our European squad as well as the Premier League squad, where we're looking at having homegrown players, academy players, etc., within those squad built out. We've only got one, which really does make you wonder, why are we bringing in a guy and creating a position for a coach to come in and work with that transitional between the academy and the first team players, if we've just sent literally a starting 11 of players who that person should be working with out on loan to other clubs. So what's that guy going to be doing? I can't remember, Stuart something. I can't remember his name offhand. But that guy was brought in for a reason, to be able to transition A to B, B being the first team. and he's not got anyone to work with to be able to do that. So it does raise question marks around, well, what is the policy here? Because it doesn't look as if we're doing anything to address that gap in the squad, but we've created a position to do that, and then we've put all those players out. So where are we going to be looking at that coming into? So it raises a few questions in my mind, and I'm sure it will for other Spurs fans as well. Another thing to talk about is the captaincy. Heung-min Son was our captain. He has now left, as we said at the start of this video, joined LAFC. The captaincy is now available. Thomas Frank has said previously that he was reviewing every aspect of the first team squad, and that included the captaincy as well as that leadership grouping as well. So it means that Son's captaincy, if he had stayed, probably was in doubt. Probably would have remained part of that leadership group, but certainly not in a captain capacity. So it does raise the question of who are we looking. I think the favourite, and certainly the favourite in the fans, and certainly when you see it on the pitch, is likely to be Christian Romero. He is probably our biggest person in the squad right now. We're trying to get him onto a new contract. We're trying to fight off all of this interest, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, as well as a number of other clubs in the background. So trying to cement that place for him within the squad and in a vital leadership role as well. A club captaincy makes and ticks all of those boxes, I think, to try and invest in that player enough to make him, hey, you could be the next Sonny at Spurs. Give us give us your commitment. We'll give you the club. Take the captaincy, lead us on to the next era. And I think it's a role that he would really relish. But then you're looking at that vice captaincy group, and we had two vice captains alongside two, three maybe, alongside Sonny last year. Maddison's going to be missing the season pretty much. So, are you going to keep him as a vice captain when he's not even going to be in the squad or in the first 11? I wouldn't think so. You're now looking at, well, who else are we going to bring into this leadership grouping? Vicario makes sense. He's very vocal when he plays. He's a bit of a character in the dressing room as well. Porro is probably one for me to bring in there. He certainly is coming across now as the next Mr. Nice Guy. He always seems to be doing all the nice things for people. You'll see him interacting with everyone. He always has a smile on his face. And more importantly, he played pretty much every single game last season. So if you're wanting that leadership group, especially on the pitch, you want them to be guys that are playing week in, week out. Not every captain has to shout and scream and drag people kicking and screaming into a match. Leading by example, doing the right thing, keeping people's morale up is just as important as being able to do all of those other things. And Porro, certainly for me, ticks all of those boxes. Other guys that you might even be looking at, Davies in a wider leadership role is probably a good idea. He's been at the club 11 years, highly experienced player, Welsh international. He's done a hell of a lot as a player, so his experience certainly will count for something within that grouping and would certainly make sense to include him inside that grouping, even to an extent, maybe even Bentancur, just simply because he is an older, experienced player. Basuma had that opportunity to prove himself under Ange Postecoglou, but the fact is he couldn't be consistent. He couldn't be relied on, turning up to training late, as well as some of the other escapades that he's been up to. Certainly, in my mind, takes him out of that running. So it's an interesting time, I think, at Spurs. Certainly, when we look at, there is a hell of a lot of change, and not just because we've had a new manager come in and we've made a few signings, people leaving, etc. There's a lot going on in the club right now. And the final bit to look at and let's have a chat about is we have now signed João Pahlinha from Bayern Munich on a season-long loan with an option to buy for 30 million at the end of the season. No doubt if everything works out as I hope it does, and I'm sure you all do as well, Daniel Levy will work his magic at the end, and we'll probably get him for around 20 million. So we'll wait and see how that goes. But the season is kicking off. What does he bring to Spurs? We have been desperate for a proper number six, and he fills that hole with spades. We've got other players, Basuma, Sarr, even Bentancur to a degree could slot into that, but they're not quite the right ones for it. They're thereabouts, but they're not that pure number six role. Best on his day when he is consistent, he's performing well, can do it absolutely no doubt, but there's no consistency there, and we can't rely on him to do that. If you look at Polinia's strengths, he can hold up the play, he can break up play when there's attacks, which allows for a more freedom of movement role for Bergval, Bentancur, Sarr, and a whole host of other players can be playing in that middle role that we have at the club. So he allows other players to free up, which makes us more dangerous on the attack. And it means that we're not having to come back absolutely sprinting to get in and help out as well, because he'll sit in that hole and he will pick things apart. He'll mop up all the loose balls and all the rest of it to give us more freedom and movement and going forward. If you look at his last season at Fulham, and I've said this in a previous video as well, he had over 300 successful tackles playing for Fulham in the middle of the park, and that was over 100 more than the next Premiership player. So if you look at what he's done there, and it certainly doesn't look as if he's probably changed an awful lot from that part or his role in that. So, what we're getting in that is the thing that we have missed for the last couple of seasons. And certainly, I think if we would have come to us when we were linked to him previously, instead of going to Bayern, things might have turned out a bit different for him. It didn't work out for him at Bayern. And, he had seen good players go away and waste a season. But at the end of the day, we've taken advantage of that. We've brought in a really good player. He could also be making his Spurs debut against his own club when we play them in a friendly tonight in Germany. So if we beat them, we'll lift another trophy, the Telecom Trophy. We're picking up a lot of these things now. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll add this one as well. But it's going to be a really good run out. If we're looking at, we played two Premiership friendlies as well. Arsenal, we beat them 1-0. We drew 1-1 with Newcastle in Korea. We fielded really strong lineups against both of those clubs. So I'm expecting exactly the same against Bayern Munich again tonight. So hopefully he'll get a starting role, or at least he'll be on the bench to come on a little bit later on. We'll see a bit more about the rest of the squad as well. But there's even talk Solanke might even be able to make either the starting 11 or at least on the bench. So at least if he's coming back and getting minutes under his belt, it means he's more of an option for up front when we play against PSG and also for the up and coming season. So things are looking on the up. If we can get another couple of people through the door, I think we'll be looking good for the season ahead. If we can maybe get someone in within the next week, which is maybe not going to happen, but if we can, it also gives us more options when we play against PSG. I think it's next Wednesday as well. So a lot of things on the go for Spurs right now, being linked to a hell of a lot of players as well. The Maddison thing is a little bit of a speed bump in the road ahead, but there's certainly options out there for us. We just need to make sure that we have that squad depth to be able to take on all of the challenge in the Cups, Europe, as well as the Premier League at home as well. That is a video. Thank you very much for watching. Drop a like on it. Give me your comments down below. Let me know what you think about all of the stuff we've spoken about. Any other targets out there you'd like to see Spurs going after? Anyone that I've maybe missed off my list as well would be good, and we can talk about it in another video. Hope you will be watching the game tonight. Come on, you Spurs. Bye-bye.